But you do have the ability to talk with any of your own organs. You have the ability to talk with your emotions. Your body is like on the team, 100% always there for you. So even if you are having a physical problem, it is because your body is always trying to do the best thing for you. Nothing's gone wrong. I just had a breast cancer and came through that. And so I directly have this experience of knowing that it's difficult to see that in that way. There is some reason why that thing ultimately is serving you. It will bring you on a new trajectory for your life path, or it will dismantle a belief that you've held for a long time that you on your own logically could not dismantle. You needed this catalyst in order to come to a space where you were ready to let go of that thing.
The episode you're about to watch has been republished. My podcast channel reaches a lot more people now, and there's certain episodes that have slipped under the radar, and I wanted to bring them up for your attention because I truly feel they are worth listening to. So please be sure to let me know what you think of this episode in the comments below. And of course, let's continue to connect. Let me know where you are in the world and where you're listening and tuning in from. I love reading it. It's amazing, isn't it, that we can do this? And the other thing I want to say as well is find out where we are if you want to put your spiritual boots on and come and join us at one of our 5-day retreats or one-day events around the world. Links are below as well if you want to find out more what we're up to. Much love from me. Enjoy. Jessie, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
And thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Like we were talking off air just now, I stumbled across you somewhere at some stage and started listening to what you were having to say and what you were sharing with the world. And I was like, oh, I got to reach out to Jessie and see if she'll come on and share her wisdom with us Australians over here, even though I'm Welsh in Australia. But at the same time, I love having these conversations. I love seeing where they go and bringing it to people to the world, because I really think these conversations need to be normalized, which I kind of get the feeling they are. Do you find that with yourself?
Oh, it's starting definitely to become normalized. I mean, I remember when, and it's not that long ago, when I first started channeling, I was very concerned about even, going to a party and having to tell people that, or not even having to tell people, but, you want to share your authentic experience with people and saying like, gee, how do you explain to people at a party that you're a channel? And very quickly, I realized that, it's even in the most mainstream circles, people are more interested now than responding to it like it's a taboo, so people are like, oh, that's interesting. And even people who are not that interested in it just kind of go like, oh, interesting. And then they'll move the conversation to some other direction. Like, well, what are you doing this summer for holidays? And my anxiety about it not being normal very quickly dispersed. Whereas maybe 10, 15 years ago, if you met people who were doing something a little bit different, there was much more of this, ostracization or, oh, that's odd or strange or,
But do you tell people straight off the bat then, like, let's say you're in the supermarket and someone gets chatting to you and say, oh, what do you do? Do you just say, oh, yeah, I channel?
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't often happen that I bump into strangers who are asking me what I'm doing. But yeah, definitely in social situations, if people are asking me. And, here in Italy, I'm in Italy, it's not at all common. So any sort of spiritual work is not really mainstream by any means right now. So often the conversations go quite humorous in that I'll be like, yes, I'm a channel, which also with the language difference has its own barrier because it doesn't actually have a word, for it. It's like canale. So they're like, what? Like they literally mean like a channel, right? Like a water bed. And they're like, well, what's that? And you're like, well, it's like, maybe have you ever heard of people who speak with spirits? And that they'll have understood a little bit more because of the culture. And they're like, oh, but do you speak with spirits? I'm like, not exactly. And eventually, sometimes I'll be like, listen, I'm a witch. I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it to you in a way that you'll understand, and then we'll start laughing and bring light to it. But, I don't hide it anymore with whoever I'm speaking with, because it's, even if someone reacts negatively to my authentic experience, that is serving them in some way, because then maybe the next time they meet someone who's a little bit different or has a different life perspective or has a different experience of reality, they'll have had the experience already of being resistant to it. And that resistance slowly gets worn away. So, I might be the first channel someone's ever met, but next year when they meet 5 more, they'll be like, oh, I remember that girl at that party one time and she was chill about it. So this must not be a weird thing as much as, as much as I thought it was.
Good on you. Like, I think people, from what I see, because I'm in front of people every month, hundreds, probably 200 to 300 people a month. And I really feel like people are screaming inside to live their authentic self.
Yeah.
And there's an aspect of them itching to want to come out. And at first it feels like so much courage is needed to overcome that fear, to just be yourself, isn't it? This is me, this is who I am. And
yeah,
it's up to everyone else how they respond to that. And it's a beautiful thing what you're doing. How would you describe channeling? Like, so if somebody's not familiar with this or listening to it, like, is it different categories of channeling, or is it kind of all fit under the one bucket?
Well, I've only come across other channels recently, to be honest. I had for the first part of my journey, I had this strange block where if I did try to listen to other channeled material, I would listen to it and then it would like disappear from my memory. So there's obviously some element of my brain that's like, okay, we're not going to absorb this on a conscious level. So I didn't really have an attraction to much channeled material. But just recently I've been like, okay, well, what is channeling? Because people are coming to me now with that same question, going like, hey, can you help me learn how to bring out my own channeling gift? And obviously, wow, I can't express to someone, hey, this is how you do it, because my experience is only with this is how I do it. Right. So I've decided I'm going to educate myself on like what is going on and study a little bit. How are other people doing this? What is it? What is this expression coming through? So I've seen that, everyone's form of channeling is so unbelievably different. There's people who literally hear the sentences and then repeat it. There's people who visualize something and then have to translate it. There's people who the words just come through them in direct flow. And there's people who remember what they've channeled. There's people who don't. There's people who have to consciously remove their resistance in every moment that they're channeling because they're present, right? So the message that's coming through, they have to make sure they're not filtering it through their own personality. And then there's others who, their own personality takes a whole step out, which is kind of like what happens to me when I'm channeling, is that I'm not even really there.
Oh, wow.
So the thing that your listeners might want to recognize is that there is no one specific way that people channel. I think the one common factor is getting over that fear of saying the wrong thing and allowing almost like the vibrational frequency of what they're connected to come through. So just having that consistent recognition of this is the frequency, and allowing that to come through. And I really do believe, and it's even in the book that I channeled with Vagrein, that everyone is a channel. We're already experts at doing this because we're all channeling our own individuated self through this body and mind, right? And that personality that comes through you consistently every morning, there's some mechanism of you as a physical vessel that's able to do that. So it's a question of like tuning the dial slightly differently and allowing something else to come through, or, broadening the dial, because many people channel their own, what they then associate with themselves, like their own higher self, or they channel an angel that they feel a particular affinity to, or they channel an extraterrestrial energy that they feel an affinity to. So there's all forms, and it's really broad.
Wow. Yeah. I would put then people like even artists and creatives that are able to put something down on canvas. That's all just different forms of expression, isn't it? And taking one source of information and putting it into another.
Absolutely.
For us to understand it.
Yeah.
I'm curious because it's not every day you meet somebody that channels. And with your personal journey, did you have a spiritual upbringing? Were you aware of any of this kind of work? Like, what was your progression that led you to, I guess, leaning into this in the first place? Or did it just randomly appear one day?
Well, okay, so the origin story, if you're going to have an origin story of this, would be that, I, as a child, I was weird, right? Like what you would label as this kid's weird. Like, why does this kid have so much could be labeled as creativity or over imaginative or whatever. But the truth is my personal experience of that same labeling was that I was seeing things, I was seeing things that weren't there. I was seeing maybe, I didn't know how to define what they are, maybe spirits or hearing things at a time. I remember a couple of periods where I had like, illness, fever or something like that. And in those periods, I would have like, be able to hear things, and people are like, oh, you're just hallucinating because your fever's so high and whatever. So a lot of these experiences I had as a child, and they were pretty consistent, were brushed away and hidden away and like, don't talk about that. That's too weird. So I learned that. That was my mechanism. I learned that these parts of me, the things that were not real, were not to be talked about, were not to be investigated. And like, you don't talk about that. And there was no like, threat about that. It was subtle. So it wasn't like my parents, were trying to, stop her from being weird. It wasn't that dramatic. It was they didn't believe that there was anything outside of the physical realm. And so if I was imagining something, I was imagining it, and it was interfering with schoolwork or whatever it was. So that was something to put a cap on. So I lived from childhood until my mid 30s, early to mid 30s, with a cap on that. And then I had my first child and had a bit of postpartum depression. And because I had a newborn, I didn't have time to go and get help for that, to go and see a counselor or a therapist or something. So, I had to come up with a strategy to deal with that. I knew that I was, in trouble. I knew that I wasn't happy and that things were not right. So I started meditating. And in that meditation, I found a lot of solace, and I helped myself through that period, and, came back to feeling whole and happy and continuing on after that depressive episode, and began my curiosity about spirituality in general. As my curiosity about spirituality increased, my ability to see things felt welcoming to come back. And so as I learned about more people who were spiritual, or maybe read some books about like monks who could do amazing things, there was a remembrance and a recognition of my childhood experiences of like, hey, maybe that stuff wasn't, so shameful or so something to be afraid of or something to hide away. And I kind of put that on the back burner because I still had a lot of fear. But also during that period, this pressure, or not like a negative form of pressure, but just like tension of something wants to come through, began to build. And so I was aware of that. And my response to that was like, no. Like, I'm not a spiritual leader. I'm not interested in being involved with this outside of my own personal experience to make my human life better. But on my 40th birthday, the pressure was like still there. And I was fed up with it. I was just annoyed that this thing was there. And I was now at this point ready to tell it that I was not interested once and for all.
Was that pressure just during your meditations, or was it constant?
It started during meditations. This just sort of access to, and I don't even know how to explain it because it wasn't words. It was just a knowing, like a cognizance more so than knowing, like not a conscious knowing, just a knowingness. And I resonated with a lot of teachers at this point, spiritual teachers. And some of the things that I would hear them say, I would go, well, I know this already. There's this information already there sort of in the back of my consciousness. And I don't know where that came from. So I'm hearing it again. And I feel like many people have that experience when they come across a teacher that they resonate with. They're like, I know this. This is what I know. It's just being voiced. And then they get very excited because they're not alone with this knowing anymore. And so I said to myself, well, you know what I'm going to do? I had heard about channeling at that point, just briefly from like Abraham Hicks and some of the Seth material. I just heard that channeling was a thing. And I said, okay, I'm going to see what happens if I go into meditation and allow this energy. And that was really the intention, just allow it. I put on a recording on my phone, like a recording software. I hit record. I went into this meditation. I said, okay, I'm going to allow whatever happens to happen because I thought I knew nothing's going to happen. And this story will be over. The pressure will go away. I'll prove to myself that I'm just imagining this thing and the problem will be gone.
What year was this?
This was 2019. So it's not even that long ago. Yeah.
4 years ago. Yeah.
And to my own surprise, there was a recording on the phone when I came out of this trance. And at that point,
didn't, sorry, I keep interrupting, but you didn't remember at the time you came out of meditation.
Yeah.
You were just like, oh, that was pleasant. And then you hit play.
Yeah. In fact, I had set an
Wow.
alarm. So I came out of the meditation sort of because it was now time to go and pick up my children from school. and and lo and behold, there's this recording saying like, hey, by the way, the thing that you think is your imagination isn't. And also, it was very compassionate. And also, there's no pressure to do anything with this. Like, now you're aware. Take your time to digest this, the fact that this is a thing, and see how you feel going forward. And so, of course, my curiosity was piqued, and I did it several times again. And then very quickly thereafter, I'd met some people who were interested in it. And it just really very quickly snowballed from there to becoming something that I was able to present publicly as well.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And wow. So when those messages first started coming through, what were they sharing with you then? Was it for you to just gain this muscle or
Yeah. So the first several messages were very much for me, in that they were sharing, sort of trying to give me confidence about the fact that this was a real thing. Because again, I thought I'd gone crazy. I thought that I was making things up, that maybe I'm just bored and I don't know, what to do with my time. So I'm making up this thing that I'm a channeler or whatever it was. And I was very logical about it. I was like, okay, it's most probable that my brain is making this up, because that is like what we are exposed to. We know that our brains are capable of doing many different amazing things. And so I stayed with that. I said, okay, well, can I be okay with that? Can I be okay with my brain making up this thing and not, have fear come in that period if it's serving me? And in the first sessions, it was like, okay, this is all beautiful messaging. This is all really positive messaging. So I don't have anything to be afraid of here. Then when I met other people was when I really had confirmation that it was something that was of value. Because when I started channeling for other people, the messages were really in service to them. There were things like, there's no way I could know. There's no way I could know as a regular human, even reading someone's body language or having had a conversation or two with them. There was no way I could know that key that would help them to dismantle a limiting belief, or that key that would help them heal some trauma that they had in their life. And because I had no recollection of what has been said, when I went and listened back and compared it with the person who had the session or who had the experience with me, and these were, just friends at the beginning, I saw that there was a great value in it. And then my human self recognized that if I have this gift, I also have a responsibility to deliver it to the people it's here for. So I'm just the in between this energy and who it's here for. And a lot of it is, yes, for me, because my own spiritual growth has accelerated tremendously since I've allowed this through. But most off, my job is just to be in between and serve this energy in a way that allows whoever it's meant for to have the greatest benefit.
Yeah, makes sense. Wow. So just tying it in for the listeners for a moment, because I remember I was talking about the authentic self and really honoring that, leaning in. And I feel a lot of people that I come across are craving that and don't know how to go about it. When you started channeling and you were, sitting down with friends and they're like, oh my God, this, you're spot on. Were you nervous in like that responsibility and getting it out there? Or did you just kind of, by this point, you're just leaning in and think it will be what it will be? And I'm happy to, because it seems like a very different career change, unless I'm not sure what you were doing before anyway, but.
Well, before I was mostly being a full-time mom, and I've been an artist in the past and a computer animator. So it's definitely a different, a different field, but I had been coaching already for a period of time. So I'd been doing some life coaching, before that. Okay. So I was already interacting with people from a service-based heart space. And in those first sessions, when it was just friends or I was giving free sessions, there wasn't any sort of pressure to get it right, because it was all a grand experiment. They didn't know if this was something that was real. I didn't know if it was something that was real. So we were, playing a little bit, and I was very much in gratitude for even the fact that somebody wanted to even be there and listen to any of this. Right. But I didn't really allow any of my own nervousness in. And I've been very conscious the whole time to separate my insecurities and my self-image and perception of others from the work that I'm doing. So I allow myself to feel ridiculous or to feel, crazy or to feel stupid. And I allow those feelings to come through. And simply by being with those feelings, going, hey, this might be ridiculous, but I'm going to channel now. And yes, I'm going to look weird and my head's going to do some strange things. And, I might say things that I don't even necessarily know or believe, right? But I'm going to allow it, because I'm also going to take a step back and say that, the things that come through us, whether you're a painter or, a musician or you're a channeler, they're not really yours, right? We take responsibility for collective energy when we don't necessarily need to. And that enforces the idea of separation, enforces the idea of ego and the self, when it's also okay to go, I am like a tree, I am like the wind, and I'm part of this grand thing. So this expression that's coming through me doesn't really say anything about me. And then you can have the embarrassment, or your cheeks can go red, or you can laugh, or you can have much more playful experience with your own insecurities by allowing those types of things through.
Yeah, no, beautiful. I think there's valuable lessons in there for us all. So who are the Vagrein? Like, at what point did you know they were the Vagrein, and why are they coming through?
So they've described themselves as a non-physical entity group, but that actual definition isn't even completely accurate, because since then, they're funny. They'll say we are this, but the only reason why we're this is because you don't have language to explain what we actually are. So when you say the word group, they're like, well, group, but also group is not the right term, because it's not like individuals got together and make it a packet. It's like only multiple, because there is no such thing as individual. Okay. So you go, okay, all right. I can kind of get my head around that. And then they say entity, because that is the word that's least close to something that we associate with. Like, they can't say like angels or extraterrestrials or something like that, because there's no word for what it is. The way I recognize them is more as universal consciousness. And even the word them is not correct, because then it would imply that they were separate from everything. But they're constantly saying that they are part of all that is, that we are part of all that is. And they come from this sort of space of complete unity consciousness. So they're everything. And then come filtered, almost like everything is filtered into what then can be allowed to come through in an individuation or in language, which is very limited. The main messages, though, that they would like us to, or that they would like to help us to integrate in our collective, are that of unity consciousness, that we are all one, and also that our individual incarnations or personalities, or whatever it is we want to understand as ourselves, is valuable and very, very important to the unity consciousness. So the fact that we are or do feel separate or do feel like individuations is because our specific individuation is absolutely necessary for allness to be all that is. So in other words, you wouldn't be you if you weren't needed to complete all that is. And that's a really beautiful message that I think many humans are missing out at, because we spend a lot of time, being very critical about ourselves and saying like, the way I am is not perfect. There's something wrong with me because I'm not like this person or that person, or I don't excel at sports, therefore I'm not good enough, or I didn't, have the best grades in school, so I'm not smart. We spend a lot of time saying that the version of isness that we are, there's something wrong with it. Whereas the message that Vagrein brings is like, no, there's nothing wrong with the version of isness that you are, because if you weren't you, then everything that is wouldn't be complete. So it's a powerful message.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Is there a particular, do you think there's a reason why it's coming through now in this time on the planet? I just feel from observation in my own journey that just seems to be bubbling up more and more, like more messages are coming through. There's more momentum, if you like, of these conversations that are happening. And I was just curious.
Yeah, well,
Do you have thoughts on that?
I don't specifically know something on that level. But Vagrein has said that the reason why it seems that there's more acceleration is because there's more request for it, right? So we're very powerful creators. And every time consciousness, and also through the form of humans, makes a intentional decision towards wanting something, right? So wanting awakening, or wanting to feel connected, or wanting whatever it is we're currently wanting, all that is has to provide the solution to the desire, or the realization of that desire. And the reason why we're seeing a lot of that is also because we've put ourselves in position where there is so much catalyst and suffering that is stimulating that wanting, right? So every time you feel separation, you desire to have unity. Every time you feel conflict, you desire to have peace. So in the way that we feel the world is going, a lot of people are very negative about the way humanity is going, like, oh, we're leaning towards disaster, and we're leaning towards chaos, et cetera, et cetera. That might be true in theory, but that energy towards like everything going, all messed up, is also stimulating a lot of our own will for things to be better, and therefore is calling in all these beautiful experiences. And it's not even just like channeled messages or or art or anything like that. We're really coming to a space now where there is connection, globally. And, even our technology reflects that. And there is connection or desire to resolve things, or to have the new world come in, or to get rid of systems that just aren't serving the whole in the way that we would, in the new, version of humanity, want them to be doing so. So, whether it's your education or finance or, governmental structures, et cetera, there's a lot coming up now. And yes, a lot of that dismantling might be a little bit tumultuous, but every time there is discomfort, a desire for comfort becomes greater. And therefore the universe has to then provide us with opportunities to achieve that comfort for ourselves, which is really beautiful.
It is. Do you think that we need to suffer to then wake up, to then lean in to serve unified consciousness in the universe? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts maybe at one point were, yes, hey, that's what's going on. But Vagrein has also outlined that we really don't need. In fact, there's a quote that says, you don't need the catalyst for the change. You don't need to what was it? You don't need to have the occasion to rise to the occasion, something along those lines, right? Okay. So if we make the choice preemptively, hey, we're pretty clear about what we want now, right? And we say, you know what, I as the individual, right? Because that's all you really have power over. I, as the individual, I'm going to do my best day to day to not lean into, the older energies of conflict or separation, or seeing my neighbor as, a nemesis or whatever it is. And I'm going to, day by day, moment to moment, be conscious about the way I'm presenting in the world and what I'm offering, what I'm sharing. The more people who do this preemptively, the faster you get to a very peaceful navigation towards the world that we're looking for, right? The thing is because of a lot of tension or trauma or pain, or those old energies of like eye for an eye, really, a lot of people do require the suffering before they wake up, which is why you do find a lot of situations where, like, someone has had a very difficult life, and perhaps they've, made some poor decisions, and maybe they've taken someone else's life, and then they go into a system and they find, religion or spirituality, and they reform themselves, and then they become a great leader in that field. But they have had their own, their own dark past. Or someone has had, a near-death experience is a great example of these things. Often people after a near-death experience wake up on the other side and they're like, well, no, it's all very clear to me now. But the suffering was required for those particular people. And we have another option. So giving people the other option and saying like, hey, listen, you don't need to suffer to make these choices, can alleviate some of that. But I know from experience coaching and also in channeling sessions that people are very attached to their suffering. Letting go of suffering does mean you having to say, I'm ready to let go of this. So it means letting go of the stories of all the people that hurt you in the past. It means letting go of your sense of victimhood. It means letting go of your sense of, being the underdog and going, okay, I'm ready to, even though I had a disease, even though I had childhood trauma, even though I had whatever, to live my life from a place of openness and unity consciousness. And not everyone's ready for that. So they'll get more of what they need to become ready.
Ain't that the truth?
Mm.
Gosh. Yeah, that was me for sure. Why do we then attach to our suffering so much? Like, why do we hold on to it when it's the very thing that we want to be rid of in our lives?
There's a confusion, I think, that it serves you, right? So I really think that once people understand if something's useful or not, it becomes very easy to let go of things, right? But the majority of people, whether they've had trauma or any form of suffering, what they believe or what they learn in that experience is that they do not want to have that experience again. And because we are very intelligent creatures, the logic says, I've had an experience, so I know what that was before it occurred. If I can prevent the energy of that from occurring again, I won't have that experience. So, for example, something as simple as heartache, right? Someone has a relationship, it doesn't go the way that they want it to go. So they say to themselves, well, I don't want to have a broken heart again. So logically, it makes sense to not fall in love. And then that person goes, okay, I'm going to keep distance in my relationships. I'm going to have these strategies that protect me from getting hurt. So when I have deep intimacy, I know that that's a warning signal that I'm in, danger. So I will step away from that cliff in order to not fall off it. Right. And that is a protective strategy. That is something that your brain is saying, take this logical protective strategy to protect yourself from pain.
Yeah.
What happens, however, is that actually isn't a sensible strategy to be holding on to, because obviously then you miss out on the beauty of having intimacy and connection with other human beings. And that is the same for everything. It's the same for if you've had a disease, then you perhaps lean towards being more cautious about certain things in your life, right? And you don't have the experiences that you had earlier that brought a lot of joy to you. It's the same in terms of like childhood trauma. If you've had childhood trauma, you learn strategies to protect yourself from similar energies and therefore don't have access to the vastness of the openness that our hearts can be. And we associate identity with them. We have diagnoses that don't say, that label you as a patient, right? Or we have situations that label you as a condition or a psychological condition. And people say, oh, I am diabetic. I am, whatever it is, as opposed to I have a condition that is this, diabetes, for example, and that I have to alter my life in order to honor this aspect of my life, right? Instead, they label themselves as like, this is what it is, and I am this thing. No, we're nothing. We're not anything. We're not even our names. We're not, our gender. We're not our location. We're not our religion. But people attach identity, and unfortunately, they attach identity to things that cause them suffering.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Why do people come and see you, like for a channel session? Like, what are the common themes people? All right.
So
there was a wicked chuckle in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because the themes are always the same, and they're no different than any of the themes of being human. There's, so much of the relationship question, how do I interact with other human beings on a, an imbalanced way that, ensures my sense of worthiness and love? How do I interact with my body in a balanced way to ensure my health and my vitality and my longevity? How do I interact with finances, which is a huge one, or abundance in a way that's balanced so that I can fulfill my dreams while also having the comfort and security that, financial abundance would provide? How do I interact with this world and with being a human in a way that's balanced? So it's a lot of, people generally come for a balancing out of any of the questions that they have as themes. And what I have noticed is that people generally have one or two of the major themes. Like, let's say there's 5 or 6 major themes. One is purpose, one is finance, one is relationships, one is health, one is, there's these major themes in life. Generally, any person that comes has 2, right? That they have throughout their whole life. And those themes are repetitive, and there's something that their inner being is really wanting to learn in those fields. And so they'll come and we'll discuss those particular themes. And generally the other, 3 or 4 are going swimmingly, to the point of them not even knowing their themes, right? So everyone's got the stuff and is working through their own version of it. But it's it's what we're all working on. It's the condition of being human.
Yeah, for sure. I was fascinated as well in the notes coming up, because you typed in energy healing that you work with as well, and I'm interested to know, how would you, because that's a broad term, but how would you describe that, and how do you work with energy as well? Because obviously you're channeling, which is working with energy.
Yeah. So the two, there's like parallel. The energy healing, I'm more conscious for. Okay, and that feels more like one of my extrasensory gifts, because what happens with that, so I'll just backstory for that thing. I was once in a situation with someone that I was very resonant with, and they had some physical problems in their gut area, and for whatever reason, spontaneously it came through to do something. Again, I don't know what that something was, but a sort of openness that was focused on that area. And they had what, you have this experience of having Kundalini experience. They had what seemed to be some form of Kundalini release, where they start talking in tongues and strange movements and stuff like that. And you crying, and just this spontaneous session of this person releasing this thing. And it was very powerful. And I went not into a trance, but definitely into a different state of consciousness. So after this situation, which was, again, spontaneous, it scared me a little. I was like, oh boy, like obviously there's something going on here. And this was actually before the channeling started, I believe. Yes, it was. I think the year before, or at least 6 months before. And I said, well, that was really interesting and something to look into, because that felt really powerful, but it also felt uncontrolled. It felt a little maybe too much to me. Like, it felt like I don't know what I did or what was happening here. And it felt a little bit like, a superhero movie where the person doesn't, what their power is, and maybe destroy a building by accident. So it was not necessarily something that felt safe to me. So when I came back to Milan, I looked up energy healing and like, what is this? And immediately found that there was a course nearby. So I signed up for the weekend course and went and did a course on pranic energy healing by Master Koa Chok Sui. And it wasn't him, it was one of his students who was offering this course. And in the intensive weekend course, everything that was being taught was something that I had deep memories of knowing. So the modalities were deep memories of knowing how to do this thing. And in fact, the course itself, the other participants of the course were, curious and maybe didn't have experience in spirituality, same as me, but they also didn't have this, preemptive knowing of how this works, or not even how this works logically, but just a knowing, an internal knowing of this thing. So I did the course, I got my certification in this, and a little bit started practicing again with some friends and stuff like that. And as I started offering this, often to animals as well, so pets, really very functional with pets, what I noticed was it was evolving. And now it has evolved to doing a full scan, which is part of the pranic healing already. So a scan of the entire energy system. And then the healing, the clearing of the energy, and the transmission of new prana, which is something you can look up online as, the standard pranic healing. But then on top of that, it seems that I have the ability to read a person's energy field psychically and reveal where there are potential ailments coming up, where there are things already in act, where there's emotions trapped, where there might be some trauma here and there. And when I talk about the body, it's bodies when I see these things. So I see like the physical body is like one aspect that you can access. And then there's the energetic and the emotional body. So it's like this vibrational thing that when I do these healings, can visit with. And So I record the sessions and I record this entire scan. The person can then listen back to it and they'll be like, oh yeah, there is this blockage or there is this thing, or really that, that supplement could, maybe I'll research this. I always say to people, like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist, I don't know anything about this stuff. So if something comes up in the scan, go ahead and do your research. Don't trust me. Don't say, yeah, I'm going to go out and buy those supplements. Go look it up, talk to a nutritionist, talk to your doctor, see what the situation is. This is only energetic information. It's not the truth. It's a stimulus for you to move on and take responsibility for your own well-being. And so then, the second part of that is the actual clearing and transmission of energetic prana, which is, it's so fascinating because it really does make changes.
Huge. I actually work remotely with an energy healer once a month, because I find as I work with more and more people, I kind of come back in for my own treatment and tune up where I can let go. And it's exceeded all my expectations in terms of other things that it's shifting, which is amazing. You've just opened up so many questions. I hope you don't mind me quizzing you for a sec. How are you then reading what's within the field and the discrepancies, or seeing? Are you is it intuitively feeling? Are you just getting hits that are coming in? Or do you see it as well?
So that aspect feels very much, I'll say, so the way it worked, especially at the beginning, was I like for the person to send me a photo just so I have something to imagine, right? So I, with my actual, logical imagination, the same way you imagine anything, will imagine the person in front of me. And then the intuitive takes over in that, yes, I do have to come back to maybe imagining them. But the thing is it's interesting because, I'll go into talking about an organ. And it's funny because organs and pets are very similar. So like, for example, I'll come down to the part of the scan where I'm looking at, the abdomen, and maybe like the liver will start telling me a story, and the story will be about, something that happened in this person's past, or it will be something about, it's not content about, certain foods that you're consuming, or the liver's really concerned that you're not able to process the things, like you're going to an office every day and having these toxic energy of the people around you, and the liver is actually suffering, not because you're eating the wrong thing or drinking too much alcohol, but because you're around these energies and you're not allowing yourself to process them through your system. And it's so interesting that this is all similar to the channeling. Is I'm having the downloads from the person's energy field, and it could be the organ, or it could be the general field, or it could be a chakra, because chakras are very much an aspect of this, because they're like energy centers. So they'll give you like a broader picture of what's going on in that person's energy, both on the physical level, but also on emotional and energetic. And it's just really fascinating. So the more I go into it, especially when there's an action, like a physical problem manifests already, it can be very easy to see that, because that's already a very dense level of an energetic manifestation. And you can see, where is this, for example, where is this blind, if someone's blind, where's this blindness really coming from? Or, difficulty with the eyes, or something that's evident to the person will speak to you very, very concretely about what's going on, which is super interesting.
It's fascinating. Do you think people have the ability then to check in with themselves?
Yes, absolutely. I really, really do think though. It is a bit more difficult, because I know that when I try it on myself, there's all kinds of resistance when we have to ourselves. And maybe part of being human is eliminating your resistance to doing what's right for yourself. But you do have the ability to talk with any of your own organs. You have the ability to talk with your emotions. You have the ability to talk with your body is a huge collaborator in your life, and your body's on your side. That is like one thing that I would wish everyone would know, is your body is like on the team 100%, always there for you. So even if you are having a physical problem, it is because your body is always trying to do the best thing for you. So if you've manifested let's say a cancer, for example, right? It's actually, nothing's gone wrong. Which I know is, and I just had a breast cancer and came through that. And so I directly have this experience of knowing that it's difficult to see that in that way. But if your body is manifesting something there is some reason why that thing ultimately is serving you. It will bring you on a new trajectory for your life path, or it will dismantle a belief that you've held for a long time that you on your own logically could not dismantle. You needed this catalyst in order to come to a space where you were ready to let go of that thing, and often, interestingly, there have been so many sages and prophets and wisdom speakers who have, gone out and said, like, okay, if you're having a problem in your teeth, it might be associated with this energy. Or if you're having a problem in your, intestine, it might be associated with this. So there are a lot of resources already out there that kind of give you clues towards where maybe your next lesson is related, So, breast cancer is related to the maternal aspect of ourselves. And that is something that perhaps was calling to me to work through and to release and to heal. And it's really beautiful how, it's funny. I know that it's hard for people to hear this kind of perspective on things because, there is so much suffering generally related to these things, but it's beautiful to have such an intimate collaborator in the form of your body with your spiritual journey.
Yeah. No, I mean, we obviously get a lot of people on a health crisis journey as well. And once they start to see the blessing in that and able to love themselves and hold love and reverence for whatever is going on, it changes the paradigm very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you then think that everything that there are no accidents? Like, is that as in whatever shows up in our external world, physically, whatever that might be, that there's a bigger perspective or picture that it's kind of leading us into to look at?
I absolutely do think that. And the reason why I think that is because it absolutely serves me. So anytime I'm facing a difficulty, if I can come back to that thought and that belief and really integrate it, I can feel 100% supported, right? So if I know that no matter what I'm facing, it is going to work out. Not necessarily based on my preferences, because my preferences might be completely off. They might be coming from any level of trauma or ego or whatever it is. But if I have the faith that no matter what I'm experiencing, that there is some divine, and also because I'm divine, I mean, I have that knowing, right? If there's some divine reason why this is for my best growth or my best interest or that of those around me, then I get this sense of palpable relief and peace immediately. So I've come to the space where I don't choose my beliefs based upon what's true or what seems to be true or what is, scientifically documented. I choose every belief that I have based upon whether or not it's serving me and whether or not it is the belief that allows me to be my best human, right? And that is one of the core beliefs that I choose to continue to invest my energy in, because it is such a powerful one that allows me to relax into life and be in the flow, as your podcast title suggests.
Yeah. No, that's a powerful message. Thank you. Wow, mind blowing. I recently had Neil Donald Walsh on the podcast, and he spoke about, I think right at the end of the podcast, he said a better question is to ask yourself, what is my soul wanting to reveal to me, or how is this serving me in this moment? So you start to change that paradigm as well. Last question on that then. Do you feel then physical elements that show up in the body that have stemmed from an energetic aspect?
Yes.
Like upstream.
Yeah, I think that they do. And I think you have to be careful with that line of thinking, right? Because every line of thinking has this potential for leading you towards beliefs that don't serve you. So if you have that line of thinking and you think, oh, if I hadn't had this negative energy, I wouldn't have this ailment, then that's not necessarily the way to go about things, because then you're constantly managing your energy in order to avoid something that's not your preference, right? If, on the other hand, you understand that the things that show up are information for you to deal with things that you wouldn't have been able to see otherwise. I mean, if something's manifested physically, it is because you didn't actually have the tools to be able to deal with it beforehand. And this is a opportunity for you to then deal with it, right? So yes, everything stems from the energetic, but the energetic is a little bit moved, like you said, upstream from where we are able to deal with certain things. So when something does manifest physically, there's no, regret there. There doesn't need to be a regret there, or there doesn't need to be a shame there of like, oh, had I had more positive thoughts, I would have been able to avoid this. It's really just the opportunity to now address what's coming up for you and to move through it. And honestly, I really wish that people would have less fear of the physical ailments appearing in their life, or less fear of, oh my God, now what am I going to do? Because it really is a question of all of your life is that packet of the journey that you're on. And when things appear for you that are not of your preference, it's really an opportunity for you to go, okay, this is part of the adventure. This is part of the storyline of this character that I now have the opportunity to get through or to navigate, or, obviously, there are many people who die from their physical problems, right? And there's two ways to die. There's dying in fear and there's dying in grace, or there's lots of ways to navigate the experiences that are given to you in life. And like I said earlier, everyone has sort of a handful of themes that they deal with. It seems for me, one of my themes has always been health. So I then have now developed an expertise, and I am able to speak in this way because of the fact that I've had this. And then one of my other gifts I can give to other people is, hey, there's this other way of looking at this issue. So it's really interesting to look at that question as well. Yeah, it's all energetic, but the body itself is even energetic. So of course it is.
It's all energy.
Yeah.
No, beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that. It really does. Like we do tend to attach to our beliefs and make them ours. It's almost like we fixate on certain things that have to be the answer, and or even can keep us in those perpetual loops that got us in there in the first place. Yeah. For sure. I got a couple of questions for you before we wrap up the podcast. And one is actually on the book, the Vagrein book. Was that channeled?
Yes.
Is that something that just came straight through? And what is... No?
Okay.
So, and what is the overall message from the book?
Okay. So we're talking about the first book here, which is Seeking Ends When Sharing Begins. And this book is a compilation of the first 6 months of my channeling journey. So it's like 2019, 2020. And the way the book came through was in sessions with groups, in sessions with individuals. And the way the book was created was each of those sessions was transcribed, and then the themes of each of the sessions were sort of labeled as like little paragraphs. So this little paragraph is about health. This little paragraph is about, relationships. And then it was shuffled back into each other. So everything that was about health was shuffled back into the health chapter. And what I found in doing it this way was that when a paragraph, even if it was 3 months before another session, one paragraph led into another. So if you read the book, it does read quite coherently, but each of those paragraphs is from a completely different session. And it was as if the entire book was transmitted over those 6 months to then be shuffled in that particular way, because the message is so coherent. The book itself covers every one of those themes that I was mentioning earlier. There's a chapter on everything. There's a chapter on parenting. There's a chapter on romantic relationships. There's a chapter on death. There's a chapter on money. There's a chapter on, anything to do with health. There's a chapter on service. Many people come to me and they're like, well, what's my purpose? And there's a chapter on that. And this particular book, when I had the energy come through to create the book, was their way of saying, hey, this is the introduction to the energy that we are. Later on, we will talk about specific subjects or something else will come through. But if you give this book to anybody, they're going to have a concrete overall view that will shift their belief in each of these subjects, at least slightly, to open them up to more of this accelerated energy towards unity consciousness. So it's like an initiation, the book. And then later on, and they've been trying to come through for a long time now, there are other books that are in the wings. There's definitely one about relationships. And for the past several years now, there's been a book called Vagrein, A Call to Change, which is about catalyst and that topic that we were talking about earlier about like not needing catalyst in order to change, and how if there is catalyst in your life, it is that opportunity to rise to the occasion. So that book there is, somewhere and appearing. And in fact, it seems like things in my business and my life are accelerating now to give me the space to sit down and like do that. And that tends to happen at like 3 and 4 in the morning. I don't know. They wake me up and it's like computer and it's like organizing and it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic, Jessie. Last question for you then. With everything we've covered today, what would you like to leave the listeners to ponder on?
I'd love for people to know how valuable they are, not just worthy. People have issues with worthiness. I really want people to go even further than that. I want people to understand their intrinsic value and that if they were not meant to be here, there's a 100% guarantee that they wouldn't. If they were not meant to be who they are, there's a 100% guarantee they'd be someone else, right? And the importance of adopting this belief, because if everyone were to adopt this belief, so many of our collective issues would dissolve immediately. If people knew not only their worth, but how valuable they are, how valuable their gifts are, how precious their open hearts are, then so much of what's created by having that sense of unworthiness or having that sense of shame would just disappear. And that's really the world I want. I often say that I do what I do for very selfish reasons. I want a different world than the one we're living in.
Me too.
And so if I share what I share and it influences anyone to go ahead and be themselves and to allow themselves to live in a state of love and value, then I'm automatically living in a better world. And that's really what I want. So that I would love for everyone to sort of go away and really reflect on the beauty that they are, because to me, that's important.
Incredible, Jessie. Well, look, I can feel your energy bursting through the screen the whole podcast. You're definitely getting yourself out there, and yeah, it's incredible what you're doing. And look, thank you so much for a beautiful conversation.
Thank
I
you.
learned a lot myself today. And for anyone listening, there'll be links in the show notes below, but just say your website out loud if people want to come and check you out.
Sure. It's www.jpherman.com. And you can find out a lot more about me there and even get 2 free chapters to the book. If you go to books and check that out, you can read them right on the screen.
Incredible. Jessie, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.